Hey, welcome back to another Bofuri comparison video on this channel. So for this episode, episode 3 of the Bofuri anime, I want you all to know something. When it comes to the Bofuri sources, we have the light novel, the web novel, and the manga. The web novel is essentially a draft for the light novel, and it typically has differences to the final version, which is the light novel. Those differences could be big or small. In these videos, I sourced the web novel and the manga. The light novel has yet to be translated, so keep that in mind. Events sourced from the web novel may not be accurate when compared to the light novel, which is why I bring up the manga, since the manga is most likely adapted from the light novel. In other words, if both the manga and the web novel are consistent, that content is probably in the light novel. I'm bringing this up only because in this one the manga and the web novel deviated. Okay, cool, let's get into the video proper. So when I first watched episode 3, I thought it was a weird episode. It was just all over the place, quite literally. Come to find out, when you look at the web novel and the manga, you see the answer as to why this may be the case. The anime supremely reorganized and in some places combined events. So let's begin by first telling you the order in which the scenes happened, at least according to the web novel, with the very quick note that the dinner scene and the cafe scenes, I've only seen them in the manga so far. The cafe scene takes place before the boss battle to get to level 2. Anyway, in the web novel, here's the order of events: the level 2 entrance boss battle, game maintenance, finding out about the patch notes, Maple then going to skill collect, Sally skill collecting, and then event day. So that's the order in which we're going to tackle these scenes. So now onto the differences, starting with the whole level 2 entrance boss battle scenario. The scene with the bear was weird in the anime. Maple flat out lets go of her shield that is solidly still there. So why did Maple freak out when her shield disappeared, even though she was clearly still holding onto it at the start? It's just odd. The web novel had a different version of events. Sally told Maple to make the large shield stand in front of her. Sally then used Mirage to make an image of the shield falling to the ground, contrasted with Sally just making the shield disappear. To highlight how strange this looked in the anime, the narrator tells us Maple, if there wasn't the touch of the large shield in her hand, would have probably reached down to the ground. So it's important just to reiterate, Mirage doesn't make things intangible. So Maple freaking out when the thing disappears is odd. Let's source the manga's version of Mirage. The manga had to get creative to demonstrate this too. In the manga, Mirage makes it look like the shield appeared behind Maple, and manga Maple reacted with confusion because she knew she was still holding onto the shield. So really, only anime Maple gets confused when she lets go of the shield that she is holding. It is important to note though that this may just be an issue of the anime trying to make Maple more adorable, or the anime trying to better depict Mirage, although it seems that when you look at the description of what Mirage does, that is that it makes a reflection of an image, the anime just flat out making something disappear might be a little strange. Regardless, I think the anime has the weakest of the 3 scenes. Next, looking at the scene where the girls were talking about the patch, here's some details that the anime did not adapt. First, you only know if a skill got nerfed if you yourself have the skill. The reason it's like this seems to be because the devs want to hide the existence of the unique skills. Secondly, Maple's Devour was nerfed, but the amount of MP that could be absorbed was doubled, with the narrator noting that it could become a magic power tank. In terms of the upgrades to the monsters could now run away and could now attack from behind, which would prevent someone just letting a rabbit hit them for an hour. Another thing, Sally also made the general guess that Maple wasn't the only one hit with nerfs. Now interestingly, in an episode that was all about Sally and Maple, the anime didn't adapt Maple apologizing to Sally for not being able to be an invincible team now. This is what caused Sally to cheer up Maple, that now she could be invincible in spite of the damage hitting her. The anime chose to remove Maple's innocent remorse, instead substituting it with just Sally having a consistent stream of thought. The way the novel and the manga framed the apology, they were just trying to highlight how much Maple cares about Sally and Sally's playtime and the quality of it. In the moment, Sally also appreciated Maple a lot more than what was depicted in the anime, so a tender moment was removed from the anime. Now, as we move on from this scene, there's something important to note. As you can probably already tell, the anime's rationale for episode 3, that being that Sally wants to look around before going to level 2, wasn't necessarily present in the web novel. What motivated Sally and Maple's activities after the patch was skill collecting. That said, the anime still acknowledged the skill collecting after the day of sightseeing was over with a line, And the manga's special chapter did legitimately have Sally giving a throwaway line suggesting sightseeing, but again, this happened before the patch. What's actually funny about the special chapter in the manga though is that it starts with Sally saying that she's played the game longer than Maple has and can therefore show her around. It's just funny when you compare the different rationales for why they were doing things in the different versions of the story. That said, we're now getting into the hectic changes territory. Looking at the anime's scene of Maple and Sally having a day out on the town where Maple gets cover. Here's how it went down. 1. Maple was alone. Maple researched the skills that other great shielders had and knew she wanted to get cover and cover move. Other details that were missed from the scene include that Maple had an HP strengthening skill and an MP strengthening skill, which increased her HP and MP by 30 and 10 respectively, and Maple was also gifted a toughness ring by Sally. This was done to counter the defense piercing abilities that were added to the game. Next, after getting cover, Maple had gone to the desert, and there's more things that get kind of wonky here because now this is where the web novel and the manga diverged. Maple goes to the desert, and in this desert she unleashes her white shield. In the web novel, we only got a quick note telling us how Iz finished the shield. In the manga, there's this whole flashback detailing Maple and Iz's material gathering adventure and Maple picking the final design of the shield. So we go through the flashback and we go back to the desert and we have Maple fighting a bunch of pill bugs. So that was her portion for her skill collecting. The next scene was the Sally skill collecting scene, which was really interesting given how the anime adapted it. So what you need to know is that Sally went to get super speed on her own. None of this was spurred on by Payne's group, and the horror angle wasn't there, but don't worry, I'll tell you where they got that angle from later. Anyway, with regard to the super speed event, you needed to have an agility of 70 or higher to clear it, and it took place in a house in the woods. The way the event worked is that an old man would invite you to the house if you had the agility required. Once there, you get a timed fetch quest where you had to go to a spring of magic water to get water for the old man, beating some monsters on the way. Sally cleared the mission in 52 minutes. The old man gives her the super speed scroll and quickly demonstrates the use of the skill, and the next thing that's worthy to note is that the manga skipped this event, only jumping to the event day. Now, they did show Sally fighting some monsters, so maybe they were referencing that particular event there. We also got the very quick image of the house that Sally was going to, but again, the manga skipped this part. Okay, so now the last scenes worth talking about, the cafe scene and the dinner scene. First thing you need to know is that the anime did a better job than the manga when it comes to introducing characters that would be relevant for later. For instance, Payne's party members were not at the cafe, and the sisters were not seen in the early chapters. Recall that in episode 1, they also revealed Payne's party members earlier than they did in the original story. So props to the anime for building these characters in earlier. Anyway, continuing from there, here's the big things for the manga. This was a special bonus chapter, the special chapter referred to earlier. In terms of the content is largely the same, just remove Payne's party members. Maple and Sally pretty much just had a great time, and then the Maple observation team had a wonderful time sharing information about Maple and Sally having a nice day. It was overall a wholesome chapter. The dinner scene was also from a special bonus chapter presented as a 4 coma. The big differences are that they got to the dinner by climbing up an old tower, and that they went again after finding out about weird rare effects. These things are usually just little like funny bonus materials, so it was interesting to see this is where the anime adapted that from. Finally, the haunted house scene occurred once the second event had already started. In broad stroke, it's largely the same except for the reward, that being a ring that Sally later gave Maple. This ring was the Ring of Life, according to the web novel. Sally guessed that it was an upgrade to the toughness ring as it gave HP plus 100. One more thing in this scene, Maple brought tons of board games to pass the time with Sally inside of the house. And okay, I had to mention it because come on, it's super adorable. Anyway, one last thing before wrapping up this video. These were Sally's specs before the event started. As you can see, this is the period in time that she learned heal. This scene happened right before Sally went to go get the super speed skill. So all in all, what did we have in episode 3? It was an episode adapted from multiple disjointed chapters that ended up giving us a really varied experience. Like, we did a lot in this episode. One of the cool things for me in this comparison was just seeing that the episode was legitimately weird when compared to the source. Getting super speed for healing a random ghost, that doesn't really thematically gel. That only occurs because they had to squish 2 different events together. Maple suddenly being unable to feel the shield in front of her. The anime probably just did it to play up the adorableness of the moment, but they totally sacrificed the logic of the skill that is Mirage, and of course, Maple's ability to not let go of a shield that's right in front of her. In regards to technical details, it's interesting to see that the anime refused to separate Maple and Sally to the degree that the original material did. When you have a situation where Sally is a dominant teacher, it does continue making Maple seem like she's less capable, which really isn't the case. But there is something that you can say at this point where it does seem like manga Maple or web novel Maple is a tiny bit more competent than anime Maple, and anime Maple conversely is a little bit more vulnerable and adorable. Finally, like I said earlier, it's worth praising the anime having the foresight to introduce important characters earlier than they were actually introduced originally, and props to that. Anyway guys, this was the episode 3 comparison. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'm leaving it there. Till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day and stay safe in this whole, well, COVID quarantine time.